Hello, my dear students. Today new topic, reactivity and resistance. Here you see plan of the lesson. Next, reactivity. Definition. Reactivity is ability of the organism to answer the effects of environmental factors by chains of vital activity functions. Reactivity provides interaction of the organism with the world. It influences on diseases development and cause strongly. Factors with influence of reactivity. Age. Reactivity is max in adults. Sex. Reactivity depends women or men. Types of reactivity, including several types. First, physiological, pathological. Secondary, biological, group, individual. Third, specific, non-specific. Third, normal reactivity, hypergear, and anode, disorder. Biological reactivity, it is determined by anatomical and physiological features of the species. Example, flight of birds, hibernation, immunity to infections. Group reactivity, it depends on age, sex, constitution, heredity, blood group, and type of high nervous activity. Men more often have gout, peptic ulcer, cancer of the head of the pancreas, atherosclerosis of coronary arteries. Women more often have rheumatoid arthritis, cholestasis, and hyperthyroidism. One blood group predisposition for peptic ulcer. 2 blood group predisposition for cardiac ischemia, stomach cancer, and sensibility to influenza virus. Individual reactivity, it depends on different individual factors, especially functional. Protective excitation plays a great role in individual reactivity state. It is caused by impulses from muscles and tendons. People have chronobiological chains of reactivity. Example, mortality at night operations is higher 3 times than at day operations. Also example, women's reactivity depends on menstrual cycle, pregnancy, menopause. Physiological and pathological reactivity. Physiological reactivity forms due to the adequate influences of the environmental which do not cause homeostasis disturbances. That leads to adaptation for moderate physical exertion, synthesis of digestive enzymes when eating. Pathological reactivity forms in causes of injury and homeostasis disturbances that leads to decreasing of adaptation of a sick person. Allergy. Non-specific and specific reactivity. Specific, immune response, ability of the organism to respond to the antigen by antibodies production or cells reactions which are specific for the antigen. Types of specific reactivity. Example, activity-specific immunity, allergy, autoimmune and immunoproliferative diseases, immunodeficiency. Non-specific. There are inflammation, fever, leukocytosis, increasing of breathing rate or heart rate. Non-specific reactivity is a response to different factors. Genetically programmed standard reactions are the basis of the reactivity. 4 levels of reactivity regulation. First, level of nervous system regulation. Secondary level of endocrine system regulation. This is hormones. Third, level of outer and paracrine regulation, parametabolitis. Third, level of metabolitis regulation. Parametabolitis. There are biogenic amines, this is histamine, serotonin, gamma-aminobutyric acid, also products of arachidonic acid. There are prostaglandin, leukotrienes, thromboxane, cytokines, interleukins, tumor necrosis factor, interferon, fibroblast growth factor, angiogenesis regulation, and kallikrein-kinin system. Metabolitis, positive and negative feedback mechanisms. Example, glucose, carboxylic dioxide. Examples of reactivity and different levels of the organism. Molecular level. Shift of the dissociation curve of oxyhemoglobin to the right in acidosis caused by hypoxia. Brough effect. Cell level. Phagocytosis by leukocytes in response to the microorganism's contamination. Tissue level. Inflammation, a complex of reactions in response to the damaging factor. Organ level. Increased heart rate when the blood temperature rises. Systemic level, the reaction of respiratory system, blood circulation system, and blood to hypoxia. The level of the organism, complex of investigatory reactions in response to the action of sound and light signals. Forms of reactivity, including several variants. One variant, anabiosis. Vital function almost stopped, but resistance increased. Two form, hibernation, decreasing of vital functions. Three form is resistance. Four form is active reactions, optimal form. Five form is adaptation. Mechanism, example, stress, hyperreactivity. Sixth form is compensation, reactivation of functional reservoir. Methods of activity change. Methods of activity increasing. Increasing effects, results, influence, vitamins, ultraviolet light, healing fitness, caffeine, dancing. Methods of reactivity decreasing. Effects, influence, anesthesia, sleep, hypothermia, tranquilizers. Resistance. Resistance is stability, insensitivity of the organism to the action of pathogenic factors, ability to withstand. Factors with influence of resistance. There are starvation, choline, hypokinesia, overstraining of athletes. Overstraining of athletes. Type of resistance. Native, hereditary, absolute resistance, and relative resistance. Induced, acute. Active resistance. Activation of protective mechanisms, phagocytosis, hyperventilation, antibody synthesis. Passive resistance, biological barriers. Specific resistance, it is based on immunological reactivity. And non-specific. Passive resistance. Passive resistance in intensity to pathogenic factors appears when interaction between the organism and pathogenic factors is difficult or impossible. Energy independent mechanisms. Biological barriers. 2. Absence of special structures, receptors for viruses. 3. Distraction of pathogenic factors by mechanisms which are not the reaction to this factor. Distraction of Vibrio halaria by gastric juice. 4. The celebration of pathogenic mechanisms, increasing of passive resistance in hypothermia. Active resistance. Active resistance is provided by protective reactions, which aim is distraction of pathogenic factor and consequences of its effects. Energy dependent. Passive resistance, energy independent. Active resistance, energy dependent. The basic mechanism of active resistance is reactive phagocytosis, antibody synthesis. Mechanisms of non-specific resistance to infections are reactivity of cells, absence of special receptors, physical and chemical factors, temperature, pH, biological barriers, external and internal, antagonism between normal and pathogenic microflora. Reticuloendothelial system. Humoral factors, lysozyme, interferons. Phagocytosis, inflammation. Reticuloendothelial system. Structure including vessels, walls, reticular cells of lymphatic nodes, spleen, Kapha cells, macrophages of lungs and peritoneum. Functions: reticuloendothelial system: protective, cooperative, metabolytic, secretory, pigmentary, hematopoietic, proliferative. Parameters for reactivity and resistance assessment. There are activity of nervous system, state of non-specific resistance, type of high nervous activity, phagocytic activity, stage of autonomic nervous system, and levels of hormones. Some factors about reactivity and resistance. Women have increased sensitivity to infectious disease in the second half of pregnancy. Reticuloendothelial system is blocked by the products of fetus metabolism. Thyroid gland insufficiency, slightly virulent infections have more severe cause. Parasympathetic nervous system, increasing of antibody synthesis, antitoxin level function. Sympathetic nervous system, increasing of phagocytic activity, metabolism, reactivity. Relations between reactivity and resistance. In general adaptation syndrome, two-state, reactivity is high, resistance is high. In general adaptation syndrome caused by infection, reactivity is high, but resistance is low. Narcosis, anesthesia. Reactivity is low, resistance is high. In general adaptation syndrome, three-state, reactivity is low, also resistance is low. Body temperature increasing cause increasing of antibody synthesis. Reactivity increasing, also resistance increasing. Increasing of antibody synthesis can cause allergy with decreased resistance to antigens. Reactivity increase, but resistance decreasing. Decreasing of antibody synthesis leads to decreasing resistance to infections. Reactivity decreasing, also resistance decreasing. In hypothermia, resistance of infections, toxin, and other pathogenic factors increased. Reactivity decreased, resistance increasing. Two-part today lesson. Two-part topic. Today topic: biological barriers. Biological barriers: difference internal, external, and internal. External: this is sky, mucous membranes, respiratory system, digestive system. Internal biological barriers: blood-brain barrier, blood-retinal barrier, hematoplacental barrier. External biological barriers: skin. Skin function: protection from physical and chemical factors, thermoregulation. Mucous membranes, including lysosome. Respiratory system function: sneezing, cough, cilia, and including lysosome and immunoglobulin A. Digestive system function is vomiting, diarrhea, and including saliva, juices, bile, lysosome, immunoglobulin A, and hydrochloric acid. Internal biological barriers: they regulate intense and removing of different substances. It is necessary for physical, chemical, and biological constancy of the tissues. Blood-brain barrier structure, including endothelium without intervasals of brain capillaries, glia cells, basal membrane, 3 layers, vascular plexus, and brain membranes. Please, here you see blood-brain barrier on this picture. Normal blood vessels, visual, and others component blood-brain barrier. Next, blood barrier, brain barrier functions: protection and regulation. Barrier-free areas: there are lack of pituitary gland, narrow hypophysis, epiphysis, gray tubercle. There are areas barrier-free. Hypothalamus brain barrier has increased permeability to biogenic amines and electrolytes. The permeability of the blood-brain barrier varies with menstruation and pregnancy, change of blood and environment, temperature, malnutrition and vitamin deficiencies, fatigue, insomnia, and trauma. Increasing of blood-brain barrier permeability contributes to admission of foreign substances and products of the disturbed metabolism into the brain. Decrease of blood-brain barrier permeability inhibits admission of antibodies, hormones, metabolites, mediators, and drugs into the brain. Conclusion: reactivity is ability of the organism to answer the activity of environmental factors by chains of vital activity functions. Resistance is stability, is sensitivity of the organism to the action of pathogenic factors, ability to withstand. Resistance is the consequence expression of reactivity. Thank you of attention. Bye.